There are moments in politics when the loudest backlash doesn't come from the opposition. It comes from your own side. And that's exactly what we're witnessing right now. Over the past few days, a comment made by Donald Trump about filmmaker and longtime critic Rob Reiner ignited a firestorm online. The remark, widely seen as unnecessary and inflammatory, immediately drew reactions not just from Trump's critics, but from within the Maga movement itself. Some supporters felt the comment crossed a line. Others questioned the timing, the tone, and what it says about discipline at a moment when the political stakes are already high. This isn't about whether you like Trump or dislike Rob Reiner. It's about something deeper: political judgment, messaging, and the growing discomfort among parts of Trump's base with how these moments are handled. For years, Maga has stood firm, defending Trump through controversy after controversy. But this time, something felt different. The pushback was real. The criticism was public. And the unity wasn't automatic. What are your thoughts about President Trump's comment? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more on our political roundtable.
Trump defending his attacks on renowned actor and director Rob Reiner, who along with his wife Michelle was brutally murdered over the weekend. On social media just one day after the attack, the president linking Reiner's murder to his activism and criticism of him, saying Reiner had a massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. There is no evidence connecting the murders to Reiner's political views. Within hours of that post, several Republican lawmakers denouncing the president's words. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie writing, "This is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered." Former Trump ally Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene writing, "This is a family tragedy, not about politics or political enemies." But when asked about that criticism, the president doubled down.
He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
Democrats say the president's comments stand in sharp contrast to what he and other Republicans said after the brutal murder of conservative activist and Trump ally Charlie Kirk in September. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton accusing the president of celebrating the Reiner's deaths because of their political views, saying it's, quote, the exact same behavior that Republicans complained about after Charlie Kirk's assassination. Days after Kirk was shot, Vice President J.D. Vance called for anyone who celebrated Kirk's death to lose their job.
The First Amendment protects a lot of very ugly speech, but if you celebrate Charlie Kirk's death, you should not be protected from being fired for being a disgusting person.
A spokesperson for Turning Point USA, the organization Kirk founded, sharing this video of Reiner condemning political violence, saying Rob Reiner responded with grace and compassion to Charlie's assassination.
It's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems.
They added that Reiner's response in that moment makes it all more painful to hear of he and his wife's tragic end.
And it wasn't just lawmakers criticizing the president. Even several conservative voices and influencers who are typically in lockstep with the president speaking out against those comments, one even calling it shameful. But again, when asked directly about that criticism, the president only digging in.
One candidate, Trump, who actually tells you he's going to govern like an authoritarian. He says it. Yeah. It's not a mystery. And you've got to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Do we want fascism, or do we want to continue the 248 years of self-rule?
I'm Rob Reiner, and America, we've got a problem. We've been attacked by a foreign enemy power, and our president refuses to defend us.
This is just the beginning, and people have to understand our democracy is being taken away from us. Make no mistake, we have a year before this country becomes a full-on autocracy and democracy completely leaves us. And we're looking at the election in 2026, and Donald Trump knows. He knows that in a free and fair election, he will lose. He will lose the House. The House will flip and will become into Democratic hands. People care about their pocketbook issues, the price of eggs. They care about their health care, and they should. Those are the things that directly affect them. But if they lose their democracy, all of these rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom to pray the way you want, the freedom to protest and not go to jail, not be sent out of the country with no due process. All these things will be taken away from him.
For the President of the United States to take this family tragedy in which both Reiner and his wife were killed and say that it's because of Trump derangement syndrome, I thought was well beneath him and beneath the office.
Not helpful, not the right tone for the moment, not a good example, and really just unfair to just don't do that to a man when he's just died.
This is ugly rhetoric. It is ugly. It is actually evil.
I think President Trump should have said nothing.
There's a time and a place for politics and for trolling. A man being viciously murdered along with his wife, allegedly at the hand of their own son, is not that time or that place.
The reaction to the president's social media post blaming Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle's murder on Reiner's hatred for Donald Trump has not been good, with many otherwise fervent supporters calling it unfeeling and ugly. Also getting a lot of interesting reaction from people who might be starting to rethink their support of the president.
And America, we've got a problem. We've been attacked by a foreign enemy power, and our president refuses to defend us. Donald Trump is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin one-on-one in a closed-door meeting with no aides present and no record of what will be said. Putin's government attacked our democracy by interfering in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump become president. That is not in dispute. It has been verified by all U.S. intelligence agencies, the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee, and the U.S. Justice Department. Trump and his campaign's conspiracy with Russia is the subject of a federal investigation. And yet Donald Trump refuses to meet with Robert Mueller, the prosecutor leading that investigation. Trump said he'd meet with anyone. He told us,
I'll speak to anybody.
but now he's backing out. If he has nothing to hide, why won't he sit down and answer Mueller's questions? What's he afraid of? In light of his meeting with Putin, it's more imperative than ever that we get that truth. Join me in demanding that Trump meet with Mueller and answer his questions.
That's where our expectations are for him. And for somebody to simply say that the President of the United States, when somebody dies in the fashion that they did, should just be quiet, we need to all look at ourselves and say that is the standard that we hold for the President of the United States, that this man that is 80 years old is incapable of actually having empathy. This man who's 80 years old is incapable of being an example for our children, regardless of Democrat or Republican. And the bigger condemnation I have is for those individuals who call themselves evangelical Christians who surround the President of the United States, but then look at this type of nonsense and turn a blind eye to it. He has a prayer council. They lay hands on him with what? Gloves? Mittens? I mean, that ain't getting through. I mean, who are they praying to? And so I have a great deal of disdain for, and listen, there are people who will say, I love Donald Trump's policies. I hate the man that he is. That is just a very, very weird paradigm that I'm not sure I could find myself in.
I've too respectful, inappropriate, unpresidential. And these are the comments from Republicans on Capitol Hill today. Forget the Democrats for a sec about the comments that President Trump posted on social media this morning about the tragic murders of Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. This all started this morning when Trump said that the murders were, quote, reportedly due to the anger Rob Reiner caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession with President Trump. So that struck a lot of people as really in horrible taste and lacking basic humanity and compassion. Congressman Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, reached out to me and said, quote, I'd expect to hear something like this from a drunk guy at a bar, not the President of the United States. Can the president be presidential? Republican Congressman Tom Massey of Kentucky said, this is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered. I guess my elected Republican colleagues, the vice president and White House staff, will just ignore it because they're afraid. I challenge anyone to defend it. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said this is a family tragedy, not about politics or political enemies, and should be met with empathy. Interestingly, President Trump's comments about Rob Reiner and his wife being murdered are in stark contrast with what Rob Reiner said after Charlie Kirk was murdered. He went on Piers Morgan's show and said the following about the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk.
I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems. And I felt like what his wife said at the service, at the memorial they had, was exactly right. And what she said to me was beautiful and absolutely, she forgave his assassin. And I think that is admirable.
Quite a contrast from what President Trump said about Rob Reiner.
We saw the major fallout happen yesterday with his statements on the tragic murder of Rob Reiner and his wife. Maga faithful reacted big time, and they called it out. It's all over social media. People, his supporters, including myself, we didn't appreciate hearing the president, who himself was shot, and after Charlie Kirk's horrific murder, we didn't appreciate, even if you don't agree with Rob Reiner politically, there was no reason for his statement to be the statement that he made.
The president called him bad for our country and said he was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned.
I thought that statement was absolutely, completely below the office of the President of the United States, classless, and it was just wrong. From my understanding, what I've seen on the news, it was drug abuse and mental illness. And many families across America deal with family members that are drug addicts or have mental health issues. And I think the president should have responded with compassion and talked about those issues. He didn't have to make it about politics.
So inappropriate and so beyond the bounds that it's hard to say anything about it, except who but Donald Trump would even think of writing a tweet like that. I don't know how many straws on the camel's back it's going to take, but it's just unpresidential behavior at an absolute minimum.
Your country is a well-educated, grown-up, serious country, and you wonder whether this kind of thing is going to actually have an effect on Donald Trump's MAGA base. They look at it and they think that's one stage too far for me.
Well, I think we've passed peak Trump here. I think if you look at what's happened in Washington in the past, I'll say 30 to 45 days, I think people now recognize he's not a new president. He's a lame duck president, and we're on the downhill slope. Now, I'm not predicting the rate of descent or how far he'll go, but each day that passes brings us closer to the 26 elections, which many Republicans in Washington, forced to defend Trump's policies, are going to find a lot of unemployed members of Congress after that's over. And then I think things really do go downhill for him. So it's 3 years of Trump in office may seem like a long time, but people need to prepare for the end of Trump and not make conclusions that the U.S. is going to be like this forever. Not going to happen.
Several reactions coming in here. One from President Trump that I did want to share with you that he posted on X. This is his statement saying, "A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness. With the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace." So President Trump just weighing in there. We wanted to bring that to you here on Live Now from Fox.
I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
We hear about Susie Wiles all the time. Mm-hmm. I just got to ask, where was Susie Wiles? Where was any grown-up in the White House? Where were they? Where were they? They had to know that even for this president, who aggressively goes after his critics, who's broken barriers time and time again, but even for this president with the low standards that he's allowed to get by on, somebody in that White House had to know this would cause conservatives, this would cause his most fierce supporters in the MAGA base to be deeply disturbed at how much it would damage him. This is not about hurting libs. This isn't about libs. This is about Donald Trump hurting Donald Trump. Donald Trump hurting the White House. Donald Trump hurting the MAGA base. Like Eric Erickson said, people in the MAGA base are exhausted by this. Who is in the White House who can say, Mr. President, you can't send that out?
Well, this has been one of our themes in this last month or two as the president has really been in a political slump. There's no one in the White House to tell him no, and that's by design. Social media account is the president himself or Dan Scavino, who's one of his longtime advisors. They're the ones who have the keys to this. But someone in the White House response staff, they put it out. The reflexive instinct is just to fight, to double down on whatever the president says. This should not be a challenging moment. This is a moment to be a human, to express sympathy, horror, sadness, and he's simply not able to do it. When that Truth Social post came on, it came just before we came off the air yesterday. I literally gasped on air, and I'm the one who always reads the Truth Social post. I am rarely surprised by what he says. I was yesterday, and it was right at the end of the show, so we didn't talk about it then because it was so outrageous. I thought maybe this one was
a
fake.
hoax. Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to double check this before
I
we
think
talk about it.
a lot of his supporters said throughout the day they thought it was a hoax, and then they came back and they said sadly, we looked at it. This isn't a hoax, Mr. President. Please take this down. That's from his supporters.
He said it.
I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned.
And two things. The only defenders I found of this is the really hardcore, like Laura Loomer defended it, and a few people like that. But usually even acolytes of President Trump distance themselves from this. And we mentioned Charlie Kirk, and I'm glad we played that clip there. Rob Reiner showed such humanity of it. But after Charlie Kirk was killed, let's remember the hunt that people on the right went on about people who dared say anything negative about Charlie Kirk. They should lose their jobs. They should do this. And now we have the President of the United States take it that much further.
At a time when you have the nation grieving about a school shooting at Brown University, when you have the nation grieving about an anti-Semitic tragedy in one of our allied countries, when you have a nation grieving about a Hollywood icon being killed, what you expect from the President of the United States is to be the consoler in chief. That's his job. That is the assignment. And he never understands the assignment. I don't think he is capable because of the lack of moral compass that I believe he has. And it just reminds me immediately about who I believe is the best president of my lifetime, President Barack Obama. He understood the assignment. He understood how to console a nation, how to bring a nation together. I remember when he heard about the Sandy Hook shooting, he was in the Oval Office. This is his first reaction, which was to close his eyes. You could see that he felt the grief of those families and of this country. And I was also in South Carolina when he gave the eulogy for the 9 people that were murdered inside of a church, and he sang Amazing Grace. And I think we have that.
Amazing Grace.
He could sing.
How sweet the sound.
And I can't begin to tell you what it felt like in that room to have a leader like that sharing in our grief as a country. And I don't think this president is even capable.
This morning, new condemnation from both sides of the aisle of President Trump's response to a Hollywood tragedy.
I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all.
After the deaths of Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, the president posting on social media yesterday morning before any suspect or arrest was announced. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. Los Angeles authorities later revealing that they had taken Nick Reiner, the couple's son, into custody. The president doubling down later in the day.
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned.
His post drawing swift backlash.
I thought was well beneath him.
Including from many self-described supporters online who flooded the president's feed. One writing, quote, "I voted for you 3 times, but this is beyond the pale." the post drawing rare criticism from members of the president's own party.
A wise man once said nothing. Why? Because he's a wise man. I think President Trump should have said nothing.
I thought his comments were atrocious.
Others pressed for reaction.
The president can speak for himself. I can tell you every family in America has dealt with mental health challenges and has dealt with addiction challenges.
Many calling for the temperature to be lowered after the recent outbreak of political violence. Reiner, a major Democratic donor and political activist, had himself recently made the same plea after the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems.
As of this morning, authorities have revealed no theory of motive in the killings, and the White House has not responded to questions about whether the president was privy to any evidence supporting his views of this case.